Hi, everyone. My name is Kelly Pritchett. I am the Director of Sports Nutrition at CWU, and I'm also a faculty in nutrition and exercise science. And I'm here just to give you a general overview of performance nutrition. But I think, a lot of us or a lot of athletes are looking for that one thing that can improve their performance. And so, nutrition is often overlinked and or overlooked, excuse me, and can be the difference between, first and third place in terms of, the benefits. So I'm going to share my screen with you. Let's see here and show you my presentation. Let's see here. It always takes me just a minute. And there we go. Okay. So this is just a general overview, just kind of covering the basics of sports nutrition. And we could obviously go more into depth or more detail with some of these topics. So why is nutrition important for athletes? Well, one thing we know is that energy and this concept of food as fuel, you've probably heard it before. I think it's a great saying, but also food should be enjoyed. So I don't want athletes just thinking it's black and white in terms of food and we're only using it as an energy source, but it's also something that is supposed to be social and enjoyed. So just remember that, although there's a lot we talk from a performance standpoint, primarily about those performance benefits, but it is something that should be enjoyed too. It can help enhance recovery, and we'll talk about that. Carbs, protein, fluids, color, which is your fruits and vegetables or antioxidants, reduce risk of injury. Yes, believe it or not. So if you think you become depleted from a fuel standpoint, we look at something like cognition or the ability to make decisions quickly. That can be impaired if we're not fueling properly. Enhanced immunity as well. We know this year with COVID, that's especially important. So confidence going into a game, confidence going into practice that I'm not going to hit the wall and run out of energy. I mentioned enjoyment, and then really lifelong benefits. I think as you transition out of your collegiate career, you know how to make those choices. So knowing how to choose what's right for you. These are just some challenges that I see, as a dietitian, the busy schedule for a lot of athletes. And so with that, I can't emphasize planning enough. It may seem like a pain, but take that extra 5 minutes to prep breakfast the night before. If you have an early 6 a.m. practice or 6 a.m. weights, whatever it is. So it's thinking ahead of time. What am I going to do tomorrow? So just thinking about it, being a little bit more aware. Relying on convenience foods. So this could be a lot of bars, things like that, which is totally fine. But we don't want to get in a habit of doing that. It's expensive, and there are other options as well. Lack of knowledge in terms of what to choose. So if I asked you what's the most important macronutrient post-exercise, a lot of people will say protein, but it's actually carbohydrate, because we want to, if we look at the number one goal of recovery nutrition, that is to replace our energy stores. And so that is carbohydrate in the form of glycogen. Supplements. Do I need a supplement? Are supplements safe? Sport foods. So kind of going back to bars and gels and, some of these things that are on the market. How do I choose these? And we won't necessarily get into a lot of this today because we're keeping it brief. So that could be a whole nother presentation. But first, let's talk about pre-exercise nutrition. And again, I've mentioned this already, but carbohydrates are the primary fuel source for the body. And to be a little bit more specific, they're the primary fuel source for the brain, or the preferred fuel source for the brain. So Adequate carbs will help you maintain blood sugar and provide fuel for your muscles. So I mentioned before muscle glycogen. That again, if we talk about a race car and its primary fuel source, the same analogy could be made for the human body. So timing is important, very important when it comes to pre-exercise nutrition. It really, really depends on when the practice is or when the game is. But as a general rule of thumb, the closer you are to the event or game or practice, the less carbohydrate that you're going to be able to tolerate. The further you are, so let's say it's 2 or 3 hours away from practice time, you can tolerate a little bit more carbohydrate. And from a numbers perspective, we could give you recommendations there if you want those, but really I just want you to kind of think about the closer you are, the further you are, you're going to be able to tolerate a little bit more. But the main thing here, always practice your fueling strategies during practice. I get this question very often. I've got a track meet tomorrow at 3 p.m. What should I have before my meet? And I say, oh my gosh, don't try anything new. That's the biggest thing. So it's not the time to experiment. So try this during practice. And find what's called your magic meal. And that's a meal that you know is going to work for you on competition, race day, game day. You know how your stomach's going to respond to it. And if you need help with that, again, that's kind of something that we do with athletes in our one-on-one consults. So if I have an early practice too, as a general rule of thumb, let's say it's like 6 a.m. weights or something like that. Should I eat? This is a common question. It's better to eat something than not eat something, especially if you're trying to maximize your workout. So this could be something small, a banana, dates, when we're wanting these quick sources of energy. And a lot of these are going to be what we call simple carbohydrates, meaning that they get broken down, they digest quickly. Graham crackers, those are actually my personal favorite. Not that I need to share that with you, but they work well from a GI tolerance or stomach issues standpoint. Applesauce is great. It could be a sports drink. So those are just some general ideas. And again, this is one of our handouts, but it kind of shows you the closer you are. I'm going to go back. The closer you are to, my goodness, I thought there was a pointer, but there's not. The closer you are to training, the less that you're going to have. And then 3 to 4 hours before you can have a full meal. So it might be that you're having lunch. This is what lunch would look like midday. Then your afternoon practice, you need a small snack to get you through. But typically it's going to be low in fat, low in fiber. Protein really is kind of individualized. We don't want something super heavy protein because we want something that's going to digest quickly and not sitting in the gut. So, and then during exercise, this is really may not apply to some of the sports, but if you're going over 90 minutes in duration, you definitely want to take something in. But, when we look at that sort of 60-minute mark, and here I say 30 to 75 minutes, it really depends on the athlete. And if you find that you're running out of energy, let's say you're playing a basketball game, or it could be most soccer games are going to be close to 90 minutes. So those are some examples of where you might sip on a sports drink throughout. So small amounts of fast carbs would be good. And going back to the soccer game, that is one where I would say, yeah, you want to get something in, but you also want to practice this during training as well. And we want to aim for about 30 at the lower end, 30 grams, and 60 grams towards the upper end. But I work a lot with running, so half marathon events, things like that, which is not necessarily going to apply, but this is some of the things that they will aim to do with something like a sports drink. And then post-exercise nutrition, you haven't finish the workout until you've done your recovery nutrition. And I think recovery nutrition is probably my favorite topic. It was what I did my dissertation on. We looked at chocolate milk as a recovery beverage. So that's obviously something that, athletes on campus are getting in the after weights. And so the purpose of chocolate milk, a lot of people may say, well, doesn't have a lot of added sugar. That is kind of the purpose of it, because we are replacing our carbohydrates with those simple sugars. So after exercise or after your workouts, that gets converted to glycogen fairly quickly. If you have a low appetite, that's another benefit of something like chocolate milk, is it takes, the guesswork out of what you're choosing, or a smoothie. And then rebuild, the protein is going to be important for muscle growth and repair. And you want to aim for about 20 grams of protein in that post-exercise meal. And then when it comes to fluids, you want to replace 20 to 24 ounces of fluid per pound loss. So that just means if you lost 1 pound pre to post exercise, you want to replace it with 24 ounces around about. So we're replacing roughly 100% of what was lost. And then reinforce, we're going to support our immune system with fruits and vegetables. They have antioxidants or phytochemicals that are going to help with immunity and also help with recovery. And hydration, I just mentioned, this is one that's definitely individualized. So it's really hard to say you need to drink X amount during training. And this is where we do an individual sweat test. But daily goal, just to give you an idea, would be about 50% of your body weight in fluid ounces. So somebody who is 150 pounds would aim for about 75 fluid ounces. And yes, it can be water. It doesn't have to all be water, but you can have a water. Sports drink milk counts as well. Milk is actually, from a hydration standpoint, has one of the highest, if we look at hydrating qualities or properties of beverages, very similar to what we find in something like Pedialyte or an oral rehydration solution. So kind of interesting side note with milk. And then we want to aim for, from a urine standpoint, urine is kind of a quick and applied or practical tool that we can use to assess our hydration status. And so we want to aim for clear to pale yellow. And obviously there's things that influence our urine color, but we can use that as a quick tool to kind of assess our hydration status at rest. You can also look at thirst. Now, and I know with thirst, we're talking about at rest. I'm not talking about during exercise. If we get into that, that's a whole nother topic, but thirst and urine color are kind of two practical tools that you can use at rest. So am I thirsty? Well, then I could be slightly dehydrated. And then these are just some pre-exercise recommendations. So two to 3 cups of fluid 2 hours prior to your workout. And we've already talked about, after workout or post-exercise, you're replacing about 150% of fluids lost during exercise. And these are some signs of dehydration. Again, we're coming up on some warmer months. So, we don't tend to see this as often during the winter months, although I think a lot of athletes think, oh, it's cold outside, I don't need to drink, when in fact, that's not true. But these are some signs of dehydration, and at its extremes, So headaches would probably be the most common thing that you would notice if you're mildly dehydrated, And then we do know, and I'll just highlight fatigue from a performance standpoint. And this is somewhat conflicting in the literature, but anywhere between 2 to 3% dehydrated. And when I say 2 to 3%, that means 2 to 3% of your body weight lost. We start to see performance decrement. So it really depends on if I'm referring to endurance or if I'm referring to sprint um, or high intensity performance. There's some differences in the percentages, but the main thing we advise is um, to limit dehydration to 2%. So you don't want to lose more than 2% of your body weight. Well, how do you prevent that? You follow an individualized hydration plan that's based off your pre and post exercise body weight. These are our performance plates. I also want to go back to that first slide about food as fuel. It should also be enjoyed. And I really want to, I guess, hone in on that. You can use these plates as a general guide. I think they work well for a lot of athletes. But I don't want you to be so hyper focused on them and think, oh my gosh, I'm having a recovery day. My plate has to look like this. Oftentimes our recovery days are a good opportunity to catch up because, you know, our appetite may be decreased on those intense days. So if your body is telling you, hey, I need a little bit more carbs or I need more protein on those rest days, then you certainly want to listen to those cues and listen to your body. So I think listen to your body over these performance plates, but for athletes who just want something to kind of give them a visual idea. So most days are going to be what I would call the Mercedes eating sign or the Mercedes symbol when it comes to fueling. So if you think of the Mercedes symbol, we're looking at about a third of our plate being veggies, another third carbs, and then another third being protein. So this is most training days where we're training on average 1 to 2 hours. Competition day is going to be predominantly carbs. Why? Because that's your primary energy source. And then in general, excuse me, I just sneeze, your performance meal plan. These are just to kind of summarize what we've talked about. You want to eat within an hour of waking. And for some of you, that might be, you know, right when you wake up if you've got an early practice. 1 to 2 hours before practice. This really just depends on timing, but these are general rules of thumb. Hydrate and fuel during practice, maximize recovery with your post-workout snack and thinking about those 4 R's. So we're focusing on carbs, protein, fluids, and color. And then hydrate throughout the day. I suggest carrying around a clear water bottle. So do as I say, not as I do, but trying to hold my water bottle if you can't see it. It's not clear, so I don't know how much I have had to drink today. So clear is going to be better. These are just some quick tips for grocery shopping. Before you shop, plan ahead, make a list. In our meal planning toolkit that we have a grocery list for you that it's again, very basic. So you could start with that and build. Buy a combination of fresh, frozen, or canned fruits and vegetables. I think there's a common myth out there in the nutrition world that fresh is better, and that's actually not true. If we look at something like frozen vegetables, it goes through the process of flash freezing, which preserves the nutrients. So we're not worried about nutrient loss there. Buy only what you need. So fresh produce doesn't go bad. Although I would say, you know, if it's starting to go bad, you can freeze your produce. That's something that you can do with spinach and put it in smoothies. So by all means, that's make sure that you don't let it go to waste. Or if you're cooking a pasta sauce, you can add some of those veggies that are starting to go off and you might not want to eat them raw. Buy a combination of simple carbs and complex carbs. So those fast carbs versus slow carbs, we call them, because they all serve their purpose. The fast carbs are going to really be important pre-exercise, providing you with a quick energy source, and then post-exercise, we are wanting to replace glycogen quickly, but the majority of what we're eating is going to be whole grain. So this would be like your whole wheat pasta, your quinoa, to give you some ideas. And then a variety of proteins. And so Maybe a topic for another day, but vegetarians, focusing on protein, some different items there. But even those of us who are not vegetarians, I think it's important that we incorporate some of these plant-based sources of proteins like beans, nuts, and seeds, tofu. They do provide some other options like in higher fiber content. So there's definitely some benefits to maybe incorporating things like Meatless Monday. Okay, and then these are just some recipe websites if you are looking for some easy excuse me, end of the day, easy cooking ideas. And a lot of these have some good ideas for sort of meal prepping or planning ahead. If you are making meals for the whole week, you can put those in mason jars. Those are just some ideas that you might use. And then also just touch on sleep. And it's kind of funny that we throw this in, but dietitians, there's been a lot of chatter around how much sleep. And really the take home is we need to be getting 8 hours of sleep. And you've probably heard that before, but anything under 7, there's actually research showing reductions in performance. So if you're averaging less than 7, it could affect your performance. So just something to keep in mind. And then alcohol as well. That's another, you could say, performance negative. If you look at a lot of these outcomes with excessive alcohol consumption, impaired exercise recovery or delayed rehydration, decreased muscle protein synthesis, which just means it impairs that process of muscle building, which we don't want as athletes. And there's a lot of research on this. Interrupted sleep patterns too. And then interference with other nutrient absorptions, compromise body composition goals. So, a lot of athletes may wonder, why am I gaining weight? It could be that they're having too much alcohol on the weekends, increased injury risk as well. So if we look at things like poor cognition, so these, again, just an overview of the negative impact of alcohol. And obviously for those who are over 21 and over, if we're referring to, what's considered one serving of alcohol, it's 12 fluid ounces of beer, 5 ounces of wine, 1.5 shots of liquor. So finally, just to summarize it all, there's no magic bullets. There's a lot of pieces of the puzzle when it comes to performance, but nutrition is one piece that you can use to improve or optimize your performance. So hopefully those tips helped. I know it was very basic, but it should give you just a general idea of sports nutrition. And we do post a lot on Instagram as well. So if you give us a follow at CW Sports Nutrition, we've covered virtually every topic along with recipes as well. Oops. So I'll leave it there, and thank you all for joining me today. And if you have any questions, feel free to email myself or my grad student. That's it.